Hello, welcome back to SEO Is Not That Hard. It's me here, Ed Dawson, hosting as usual. And today, this episode, it's a little different. I'm joined by Richard Bartlett, who's the co-founder of Greenhearth Energy, a company which helps businesses finance solar installations here in the UK. But this isn't just a chat about renewables. Richard has a background in big finance and tech startups, but when it came to launching Greenhearth, he bootstrapped it from scratch and turned to SEO. And this very podcast, actually, to help shape his approach. Now, what's fascinating is how he didn't just use SEO to get traffic, he used it as a strategic tool to understand what potential customers were searching for, to find hidden content opportunities, and even to guide product development and positioning. And he's now built a business doing meaningful work with millions of pounds in projects underway, and a lot of that journey started with listening to this show and using keywords people use. So this is a great example of SEO thinking being applied far beyond just ranking pages. So whether you're building your own site, running an agency, or thinking about starting something new, then I hope you'll find this one inspiring. Let's get into it. So, hi, Richard. Thanks for agreeing to come on. Let's start by, if you just introduce yourself to the listeners, sort of what your journey is and where you've come from.
Hi, Ed. Well, look, it's great to be on. It's that weird thing. I feel I know you so well. I've listened to about 127 of the podcast, which is quite ridiculous. So you have this like dynamic where this is the first time we're really speaking, but I've listened to so much of your chat, so it's great to be here. But look, so well, I'm here because we set up a company called Greenhearth about a year ago, and we've been bootstrapping it, so it's really just been my work. I don't have much background in SEO, but I sort of came to I need a website. I need to think about how we're going to build it, how to think about the web presence, and I came across the podcast, and I've been listening to it, and it's informed the way that we built the website. Although I have to say at this stage, like the website is not very good. So, no one should take the website as any kind of like validation of the quality of your advice. It's all down to the kind of my lack of time and ability. But I thought it would be great to sort of, speak a little bit about, what I've taken from the podcast, both in terms of designing the website, but also, and something I completely didn't expect, we've really kind of used your thinking and your approach to think about how we've developed the business, and we've used it for market research, and we've refined what we've done and our strategy with our customers by sort of thinking about what we're learning from the information that your software has been throwing out to us.
That's fascinating. Well, first of all, thanks for listening to so many episodes. And it's also really interesting to hear that it wasn't just the SEO that you found use from it, because I do try and put in things that go beyond SEO a little bit, because like yourself, I appreciate my journey through into SEO started from a business perspective as well, because there's got to be a point of SEO. Everybody out there is trying to build something, and it's part of that business process. And as part of building a business, you kind of see where the overlaps are between SEO, customers, market research, conversion rate optimization, all those kind of things that become more strategic, as well as just the day-to-day things that you do. Now, we first spoke, about a year ago or so, when you, as people know, on the either side of this podcast, I invite people to have a call. Contact me to have a call. We can talk about how the tools that we do can help, and also it's like there's no commitment with that. It's just like I do these for free for people, and I think you were in the very early stages at that point. And I think you had your first customer at that point, which you admitted at the time was a bit of a cheat, because it was someone that you knew previously, or a friend or a colleague or something. So obviously between now and then, I know things have grown, because when we first spoke, you were just using the tool on the free side, and then because you were bootstrapping, and obviously you've grown, because I now know that you've obviously subscribed to our standard plan, so I can see that's going. So obviously the business is growing. So it'd be really interesting to hear how you've found that journey of growth over the past year or so, and how SEO's played into that.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. So, just to kind of give you a little bit of background. So my background, I spent most of my career working in finance, working in big companies, big banks, sort of, small cog in a massive, in a massive machine. But then I suppose about 8 years ago or so, I left that, and I've basically been working in sort of startups and technology sort of since then. And the first 6 years, myself and a couple of other people, we had a really well-funded startup. I sort of was the CFO and spent a little bit of time as the CEO. We raised many tens of millions of pounds. And so I got a little bit exposed to kind of websites and growing the company then, but it was all from, this is just something we need to do. You need to pay this in order to do it. It was all very expensive. People threw lots of words at me, and I wrote lots of big checks, and I'm not really sure where that got us. But there were lots of people who told me it was all very expensive. And I stopped doing that about sort of, I guess, 2.5 years ago, and then sort of started looking at the solar market. We played about looking at the domestic solar market for a year, but then a year ago, just before I spoke to you, we sort of set up Greenhearth, which is really sort of focused on helping businesses find and arrange finance for commercial solar.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the beginning of the business. And this time, rather than sort of doing it with a bunch of people, going out there and raising lots of money, I thought, the interesting thing to do would be to try and bootstrap it, build it up ourselves. I think in the first year, apart from my time, we spent about sort of £15,000 on the business. So it's been really, just software licenses.
Compared to 10 million.
It's keyword people. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
But we've been really sort of slow in building it up and just trying to, do it all ourselves. So that's when I sort of, came to the podcast. And I was, just searching around on the podcast store on the Mac, looking for SEO podcasts, and I listened to a couple, and I think I fell across yours when you were sort of doing the kind of 101 tips or something. I think that was the point of your series that you were on. I sort of listened to one or two of those, and it was short, it was succinct, and it was full of kind of actionable, useful information for someone like myself who was just starting off. And I thought, this is fantastic. And to be honest, I haven't found anything else like it, which was so sort of succinct. So then I kind of just got into listening to them, and went back to the beginning. Found some really interesting ones on sort of site architecture, topical cluster design, things I'd never sort of come across before. And and then sort of reached out to you, and we had a great little chat. You advised me to build the website on WordPress, which I have to confess I haven't done. It was just too much. I didn't have time to learn it at the time. So I know that's going to be some technical debt I'm going to have to solve at some point. But that was really the sort of the intro into it. And so that's how it started.
And it's an interesting, like I say, because obviously bootstrapping is what I've always done. So I've always been a bootstrapper. So it's interesting to see that obviously you had that investment side when you did the kind of the startup route and the raising money. And obviously I'm presuming that didn't work out. Otherwise you wouldn't be starting another business. And that's one of the things I've always tried to do with SEO. Is not that hard, because SEO is not necessarily all that hard as long as you understand a few of the basics, which is the kind of the mantra that I always sign off with nowadays. So when it comes to the lead generation on your site, is your website proving an important part of your lead generation?
It's growing, I would say. For us, we get generations from people who come to us directly. We get we work a lot with installers, so we get quite a lot of generation from installers, and we're still early days. So we get quite a lot of sort of referral. But of course, people go to the website and they check the website out. And I was always struck by, I think, you've always talked about, needing to take a long view of these things, build topical authority. There are no kind of quick wins, and sort of, intuitively that feels like the right thing for us. And so we started very much with, let's build the website. So that was the first thing. So when I started off listening to the podcast, that was really what I was looking for. So when you talked about, what site architecture to take, how to think about, thinking about what your topical clusters are, that was really where I started. So I'm starting looking at the keywords, and I'm looking at how you're clustering it together. I'm thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to kind of build the site. I'm going to build, some guides. These are the kind of guides that I want to, that I want to build. And what was really interesting about the topical clustering, because we're focusing on financing commercial solar. So I'm, typing in financing commercial solar, and I think people want to, what is commercial solar? How do you finance it? What are the different types of finance? That's what I'm expecting. That's all there. But what also kind of comes out of it is, people are asking about accounting, and people are asking about grants. So not things I would have necessarily thought of, but actually these are kind of the biggest clusters, because sort of, that's where there's no information. So that's where we sort of ended up drilling into. And, so I then, you then start writing sort of sections on, accounting for commercial solar, grants for commercial solar, which is pretty dull and pretty techy. And actually, those are the questions that people seem to want to answer. And,
Yeah.
the point that you make, if you shoot for the kind of the obvious sort of keywords, not that any of these are kind of high volume keywords, but if you shoot for the obvious, it's really hard to go. But you start writing about accounting and grants, and, we see so much of our traffic coming in there, because we're the only people who are kind of writing around that, because it's, and certainly writing around that in kind of like, proper technical detail, where it's, where it's properly usable. And so I suppose that was a sort of the first phase of using the tool, when I was just, using the credits, drilling in, maybe using the, the AI assistant to give me some FAQs and just sort of help build out the templates and the content brief. But with that sort of insight on the kind of accounting and grants, we then sort of started thinking about, well, actually, as we position the business, maybe we need to kind of lean into that, because that's where there seems to be where the shortage of information is. And so we started sort of, tweaking our content and our optimization and how we sort of present the business. And we ended up sort of moving a little bit away from really focusing on delivering the finance to delivering the analysis to help companies decide whether or not solar is a good investment, to help them decide, I've got a roof and I use this much power. How big a system do I need? Should it be kind of 50 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts? And I think your episode 77, engineering as marketing, that was a kind of a key one for me, where you just talk about, okay, well, let's build the tools to get people interested. And so we thought, okay, well, let's do that. And so we actually then sort of went on a kind of a 2-month segue where we actually built out some software to help with solar optimization, to help with the analytics of solar. Now, we haven't actually got those onto the website, if you like, so we're not sort of there in an SEO sense. But actually, that software has become key to the way we present the company and the way that we talk to installers, the way that we talk to customers. So, that sort of thinking and approach came out of the insights that we were getting from SEO, the insights that we were getting from the customer base using the tool. But we've applied it much more in our business, if you like. And we will apply it on the website eventually, but I've got to find a kind of a simplified version and then think about a way of doing it, and probably move off onto a WordPress site as you originally advised. So, there's some time to do that. And, small business, you can never do everything, as it were. But what was really interesting to me was how we were taking the lessons and the information that were coming out of the SEO and thinking about that in terms of the way that we actually sort of thought about our business strategy, thought about our customers, and thought about the way that we presented ourselves.
Yeah, I mean that's that's a really fascinating journey you've been on there. I mean, it's amazing to think that keywords people use as ways to help you not just do the what are people asking and then building the content around it, but also I think I did a podcast on it a while ago. It's like audience research is market research as well. So you've just by looking for questions, you're not just finding questions to answer, you're also finding questions that can lead the business into different directions. So with this software that you've developed, so is this something that helps you sell in the installations? So you can start it as a research phase. So you help them with their research as to the viability of a project, and then that's the first step in maybe towards an installation later.
That's exactly right. I think lots of people, when they're talking to companies about installations, approach it very much as an engineering problem, sort of how many panels can you fit on the roof? Is the roof the right material? What's the right inverter to put with the panels? So it's how are you going to attach the panels to the roof? Because, if you're an installer, that's the thing that you do. But if you're a company, that's all kind of very interesting, but you kind of, you just assume you're going to deal with someone who can handle all of that. What you really want to understand is the economics of the system. How much is it going to cost me? How much is it going to save? If I'm going to finance it, are my savings going to be greater or less than the cost of financing? And so that's the bit we sort of focus on. And so the software that we've developed, we've got some optimization software which sort of says, okay, you've got this power consumption a year, a month, during the day, the hours of the day. You can put a system on your roof that will generate this much power on these days at this hour. We match the two together. And then we sort of scale it up and down to see, okay, what's the optimum size system for you? Because as your system gets bigger, you can offset more of your energy use. You create a bigger environmental effect, but you're also generating power at times that you don't need it. When you generate power at times that you don't need it, you sell it back to the grid. You maybe get 3 to 6 pence per kilowatt hour. If you're using the power yourself, you're maybe saving yourself 24 pence a kilowatt hour. So basically, you want to optimize your solution, because if you make it too big, then you're paying for a great big system, but all the energy is just going to the grid. It's not saving money. So we find a way of working out what the best size is for the system. And that just helps, companies sort of take a decision. They can say, yes, this makes economic sense to me. Yes, I can see that, for me, 125 kilowatt peak system is the right size. And then I can go on and worry about the engineering and the installation thing. So that's, so it's a useful piece of software, but it fits right into that sort of engineering as marketing type of theme that you articulated. Now, we don't have it on the website yet, but it's central to the way that we sell ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can see how when you can work out the right way to pitch it for people and the right way to get that as a lead generator. That's the kind of, that's the engineering as marketing principle. You can create some fantastic content out of it, but can also be a fantastic lead generator. And that's like, what we do at Broadband.co.uk, what we've done at other sites, what we do at Keywords People Use, the fact, that people can try it before they buy it and see that's the same engineering as marketing principle. On an aside, and this is nothing to do with SEO, but I'm very interested in renewable technology and stuff. I've got a heat pump at home here, and we've got solar for doing our hot water. We're in a conservation area, which is an issue for us getting solar panels yet. But you're talking about the rate they get for sending it to the grid. So do you do battery systems as well? Because I can imagine some places are generating power when they're shut, but if they had batteries, they could be saved. Does that work into your systems yet?
Yeah, no, we do, and we can help people finance batteries, and we analyze systems with batteries. I mean, what I have to say is that actually for commercial companies, they generally use most of the power during the day and during the week. And so generally we find that batteries, although they've got much cheaper, and there are some really interesting things you're beginning to do with batteries, they're not quite as economic as panels. So for most businesses, the only reason to put a battery on be if you've got some non-economic reason for it. So you need an uninterrupted power supply, or you've got a wedding venue where you need to be certain you've got power in the evening. So you want to manage a power cut, and so you can say, well, I'll have a generator, I'll have a battery, and if I have a battery, I can use it the rest of the time. But generally, if you're just thinking about batteries, it's dilutive to the economics compared with the pure panels. But that will change. I think it'll change probably in 12 to 18 months, given the way sort of the prices of batteries are coming down. But at the moment, the economics aren't quite there for batteries, at least in most of the schemes that we see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been trying to work out whether to get a battery for home to sort of buy cheap electricity at night and then use it on the heat pump in the day and stuff. But the price point of the batteries is getting cheaper all the time, but it's not got quite to the point where it's like, it feels like it's worth doing yet. But anyway, that's a total aside. Let's do this. But
we can talk about it later on.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to SEO now. Obviously, your business sounds very clearly like one where volume of people coming isn't anywhere near as important as the kind of the quality of people that you get on. Because I talk a lot about in many podcasts where I say don't concentrate on volume, because volumes just is a vanity metric for most people, unless you're selling display advertising, when volume is everything, and that's a completely different discussion to have. But for most people, with most businesses, with most sites, you just want the only customers you really care about, the only visitors you really care about are the ones that will turn into customers. It's nice to have more, obviously, but it's obviously about finding those core terms that will actually convert people. So how are you finding that sort of volume versus conversion metric?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, we must be a kind of a classic sort of, we're a niche subject to the niche in a niche area. So it's always small volume. And actually, when I was first listening to the podcast and I think, if I recall, it's something we actually spoke about when we sort of had that first conversation a year ago, was just, because you always think that volume is important. When you come to this fresh, volume is always up
Hmm.
there in your mind, and trying to sort of like move away from volume to quality, I think it's been a big part of the journey for the last year. I mean, just to put that in context, the UK has got about 250,000 hectares of south-facing commercial roofs. And if they were all covered in solar panels, well, in fact, about if half of them were covered in solar panels, that would be enough to kind of power about 50% of the UK's energy requirement. So it's a
Wow.
huge resource there. And there's a huge opportunity there, which is why we're trying to build the business, because with the right financing, companies can get sort of a 10 to 20% reduction in their power costs after the cost of financing. But it's
Hmm.
still pretty niche. So I had a look at the figures that the Department of Energy and Net Zero sort of published this morning, actually, in preparation for this call. And there's about kind of 40,000 commercial solar installations in the last year. And that's maybe undertaken by, there's a lot of registered installers. So, there's maybe 2,000 installers out there, but probably 90% of those commercial installations are being done by 100 different installers around the country. So, our total market, even if you assume 2 or 3 people from each company are looking at the web or involved in the purchase decision, you're maybe only 150,000 searches, 200,000 searches a year, as it were. So
Hmm.
what's that? So like, 12,500 searches a month is your total market size. So
Yeah.
you're, we're fishing in a really small market. It seems,
Hmm.
it seems to me. So that's where sort of trying to find the kind of the quality has been key. And,
Hmm.
I've actually found, I mean, the thing that sort of switched us across from just using the credits to actually sort of getting, getting a subscription was the development of, the optimization tools and the link into console, because that's been fascinating for us to see, okay, these are the questions that are being asked. This is where we're ending up. And that's really allowing us
Hmm.
to sort of, refine that whole understanding of what the customers want. And so, for us, again, it's taken us back to those sort of really detailed questions, is that, if someone's wanting to know what the sort of capital allowances are in relation to a solar system, you kind of know at that point they're thinking seriously about it. And they're
Yeah.
thinking about,
Hmm.
how's that going to work? What does it mean for my account? Over what period am I going to be depreciating? Technical accounting stuff, or, can I use it against my annual investment allowance? But when people are asking those questions, they're clearly seriously thinking about it. And those are
Yeah.
the kind of customers we want to capture. And so, using that optimization tool to sort of pick up those kind of queries, and then think about how we, build out content to, capture those very small numbers of queries, but then to sort of position ourselves as being authoritative in that area. And that's
Hmm.
really a way that we've thought about it. And, again, as I said at the beginning, I mean, we've probably thought about it more than we've actually done it. So, when you look at the website, you think, oh my word, there's a lot to do here. Um, but these things are iterative, and,
Hmm. Exactly.
it's shaping the way we think, not just about the website, but the way we think about our marketing material, the way we pitch the business at events, the way we pitch the business when we go and talk to installers, when we talk to customers.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting how you say how it's iterative. And that's what I always try and say to people. First of all, you're never going to get everything done on day one. If you aim for perfection, you're never ever going to launch anything, And I've worked with some people in the past who were total perfectionists, and when they did produce something, it would be of incredible quality, but it would be so late to the party that it's better to go with something that's much more rough and ready, but is at least in the right direction. And then, yeah, as I say, iterate and change, and because your direction might change based upon the things that you learn, like you've said earlier about how you found how that software piece came in that you wouldn't have imagined from the start, but that only becomes because it's iterative. And also, yeah, the Google Search Console data is just it's a fascinating amount of data that you can get out of that. And in Google Search Console itself, yeah, that's my frustration's always been, well, one, that it only gives you 1,000 query lines, which might not matter for many businesses, but with us, with our sites, 1,000 wasn't enough. But also the fact it's so unintuitive to use Google for such a big company who probably invest a lot of money in design and all those kind of things and testing. I've never ever liked any of their interfaces of any software they've ever done. I still get completely lost in the Google business tools, like for set our email up and domains, and it's such an awful interface. And Google Search Console, to be fair, is slightly better than that, but not much. Which is why we wanted to, we built that piece to get the data out, and then also to interrogate it. And that fact of crawling the site and comparing the sort of the data on site to the Google Search Console data, we've found it. Well, we found it so incredibly useful. We build these tools based off the things that I've wanted for years, to work to the process that I was doing for so many years. Google Search Console wasn't around when we first started. Neither was people also ask. Neither was a whole bunch of these things, but as they've come along, it's just trying to put that same process in that we always went to with originally back with broadband.co.uk, and then with other sites obviously in the future we've done since then. And that iterative part of the process is the real key thing. So it's really cool to hear that's been useful to you as well. So with your customers, I mean, obviously, like I imagine quite hard, a customer's one to you is worth quite a lot. I imagine your average kind of deal size.
Yeah, no, it's reasonably expensive. I mean, it's not huge, but I mean, it's probably somewhere in the sort of like £2,000 to £4,000 per customer for us. Sort of, so if we're then arranging a sort of a financing for them, and we're doing the analysis, and we charge a little bit for doing the analysis, and we charge a little bit for raising the for raising the finance. So £2,000 to £4,000. So reasonably expensive, but not the most valuable sort of customers that you ever see, and tends to be sort of one-offs, and there's not sort of big lifetime value to build out from that.
Mm-hmm. No, interesting. How many have you done so far?
Well, we're working, I guess, we've worked on about 35 projects at the moment. And, we've probably been really marketing hard for about sort of 6 months, maybe 7 months or so. So I think when I was speaking to you, sort of as we were building out the website, we built the website, and then we started sort of kicking off on LinkedIn. So, and a lot of these projects take sort of a while to come through. So we've probably got sort of 4 or 5 now in execution. We've got 2 that have been completed. I'm hoping we'll have another 3 or 4 sort of completed in the next couple of months. And, by that time we will have arranged maybe sort of £7 or £8 million worth of schemes. So it's beginning to get meaningful. And, we're at the point now where we're seeing sort of 1 or 2 new opportunities a week, and which is good for building it. And I mean, again, what it's like when you're bootstrapping. You want to grow quickly, but you also need to kind of grow at a rate that you can control and you can manage, and you can and you can sort of handle. And so it's always a continuous balance between working on the projects, delivering the ones that you've got, sort of building new content, developing the website, improving things. So but that's the fun thing about bootstrapping. You sort of get to dive into the detail across these things, and sort of have the opportunity to learn and to test. I mean, it's so different from as we alluded, the first business I sort of worked on in the entrepreneurial sort of way. We spent lots of money, and we went the other way. We built. We were perfectionists, so we spent maybe 18 months or 2 years building stuff before we showed it to a customer. And then, found that it didn't have quite the demand that we were hoping for. And, you're then sort of running around trying to recover it, deal with technical debt, et cetera, et cetera. So we've very much gone the other way here, which was sort of, really, as soon as we could, let's get out, let's start talking to customers, let's learn from that, iterate, develop and evolve.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. It's great to see that it's gone from, let's say, from when I first spoke to you, like you had one customer who you didn't really count.
I think the business that was our first customer was owned by my wife, so it was kind of a
that's it. Yeah. There's a bit of a conflict of interest there, I suppose, in terms of it's not completely. You had to persuade us quite hard, I imagine. So to see the numbers you're getting up to in that bootstrapped way is absolutely fantastic. Because I've actually done a bit of angel investing in the past, and I spoke to a lot of companies that were raising money, and it's only ever at like angel sort of seed level, and there's so few of them that I've spoke to that are still around. I only ever invested in one, and that one actually is still going, and actually got bought out by another company. So my investment's still there. It might still go to zero, but but they did actually raise 3 million
Oh,
on another round at the start of this year. So but my investment in that is so small. But that's one where it's like if that comes off, that would be like a nice bit to put in the
nice.
pension at some
Well,
point
no,
in the future.
I think, for me, I mean, one of the observations I made about the whole keywords people use sort of ecosystem is I think it's so valuable for startups.
Hmm.
I know you've built it for SEO customers, but, I think there's a whole, line there for startups, because this whole, if you're a startup, you've got no money, you can't afford to do market research and things, in that first company I worked on, we spent, hundreds of thousands of pounds on market research, but I don't think we got information back that was any more insightful than, what's coming out of your keyword clustering exercise. And you can build up from that. And so, we've used this as a tool to, to help shape that whole customer research, customer optimization process. And so, I know it's, in some ways it's probably a sort of a smaller market than the SEO market, especially kind of, given that fantastic customer base that you have. But, the use of the tool in the startup world, I think is a really interesting opportunity. And, I'm sure you could be a fantastic mentor to startups, not so much with the investment, but just sort of getting them to use the tool and to help people sort of grow businesses and think about it. Because, when you're starting a business, that product market fit is your key question. And,
Hmm.
you know, what is sort of, keywords people use other than the machine to understand product market fit?
That's some incredible feedback. You're making me think I've got work to do now to go and sort of pitch at a whole new market, haven't I? Really there, but yeah, no, I mean, I say we've used it in the same way, So I can. It's fantastic to hear how you've used it, and in ways that we didn't necessarily expect people to use it in the first place. And it's fascinating to see how it's driven your journey and a journey that's working out for you as well. I mean, um, which and I said, I've watched you on LinkedIn. I've seen you out there speaking to people. I've seen it growing, and yeah, it's just fantastic. And also, I totally buy into the whole solar thing and the renewables. Because I know some people don't like net zero, and I have arguments with people in the pub about the economics of it. I've read there was I did actually convince one of my neighbours who said we should all be running hydrogen boilers, and I sat down with him, and he's actually a really clever engineer guy, and I said look, if we do it all as hydrogen, we've got to use electricity to convert it to hydrogen. There's an energy loss there, so you're down to 80% efficiency. Then you've got to pipe it. There's an inefficiency there, and then you've got to burn it in a boiler, and you won't get past 100%. You get this
Yeah.
efficiency loss there in burning it. So I said, right, or we can use that same electricity down a wire. Okay, you get a little bit of loss on the national grid, but it's nothing like the same as sending a liquid or a gas down, and then you get 300% efficiency on your heat pump.
Yeah.
You cannot beat that. You cannot beat physics. And he was like, actually, you can't. If you understand some of those physics, so I'm totally
Yeah.
into the whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sure, the way you really get business to, the way you really get business to work, and to be, is, you get, you generate the environment where it's an economic investment to make. It's really hard as a business. Most businesses, there's never like, huge sums of money flying around. They don't have like £100,000 pushing around to sort of spend on solar. And if they've got that kind of money, they need to invest it in their business or,
Hmm.
grow their working capital or whatever it might be. And so the ability to be able to fund a system and make a net saving from your savings is key. And when you can do that, then you can really unlock the opportunity. And the great thing with businesses, if you're putting the solar panels on roofs, you're not having to pay putting in ground mounts, you're not covering farmland, and you're generating the power where you're using the power. And that's taking pressure off the grid. It's you're using it sort of, in a very sort of constrained environment. And so making that work, I think is a huge opportunity. And, we're sort of, we're sort of super excited by that. I think sort of over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, the economics have really got to the point where for the right size system and with the right financing, you can deliver those kind of benefits. And, that's the message that we're trying to get out, or whether we're working with installers or with businesses. And that's that's what we're doing. And we're really excited about it. But like all these things, you've got to kind of communicate it. And,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
active website and some SEO comes in.
yeah, website SEO, getting on podcasts, speaking everywhere, just letting people know. I'm just annoyed that I haven't got a commercial roof space that I can be getting on with this, because if you have got commercial roof space that is facing even slightly in the right direction, I imagine, why are you not putting solar panels on there, financing it, and saving money? And when the finance is paid off, you've still got all the kit. It's still got a lifespan in it. I just can't see why people do it. So if you are listening and you are in that situation, or you know someone in that situation, then get in touch with Richard. And Richard, I think, just how do people get in touch with you if they are interested in exploring this?
I mean, they can go to our website, as long as they remember it's our website. It's not nearly as good as it should be. With our contact details there, you can reach me at Richard at greenhearth.energy. But all our contact details are on the website. But please reach out. I mean, we'll do the engineering, the optimization study and stuff. We'll do that all for free for you to have a look at. And then if you want to sort of go forward and take it forward, help through that process. But that initial study and analysis is all complimentary. Again, something we've taken out of your book, Ed. No obligation. I think that's the phrase you use.
Yeah, no obligation. Yeah. No obligation. Yeah, that was brilliant. Well, thanks for coming on. It's been brilliant to hear your journey, hear about your business, and obviously quite good for me that you've enjoyed using keywords people use and find it useful. So thanks very much for coming on.
Fantastic. Thanks for inviting me.
Anytime. That was such a fantastic chat. Big thanks again to Richard for coming on and sharing his journey so openly with us. I think what really stood out for me was how he used SEO not just as a way to get traffic, but as a way to think about customers, about market positioning, and even about what kind of product to build. And it's a reminder really that, when you pay attention to what people are actually searching for, it doesn't just help you rank, it helps you build something people genuinely want. And if you're listening to this and you've been on the fence about diving into SEO or using tools like keywords people use, then hopefully this gives you a bit of inspiration to get started or to go deeper. And if you know someone with a business that could make better use of their commercial roof space, definitely send them Richard's way. Richard also very kindly created a PDF of his favorite episodes that he's listened to, of all the episodes he's listened to of this podcast. And he's put them into different groups. So the ones that helped him with building the website, the ones that helped him with business strategy, the ones that helped him with optimization, and the ones that he found that were just for fun, the ones that he found the most interesting. And I will put a link to that in the show notes, and I'll also stick it on LinkedIn as well. So thanks Richard for sharing that with us. So now, as always, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please leave a quick review or share it with someone who might find it useful. It really helps spread the word. And until next time, keep optimizing, stay curious, and remember, SEO is not that hard when you understand the basics.